Stretching along the coast of Southeast Asia, with dense mountains and jungles to the west, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam is home to approximately 100 million people. Vietnam's history has been shaped through its geography, maritime trade, as well as its tumultuous relationship with its neighbor China to the north. Since prehistoric times, Vietnam's Red River Delta has been a population center due to its fertile soil and defensible location. Feudal communities of rice growers began to develop in this region, and eventually confederated to form the Kingdom of Van Lang, which corresponds to the Bronze Age Dong Son material culture. Along the southern coast, the separate Sa Huyn seafaring culture developed strong ties with the western central Philippine archipelago. The Lac Viet people of Van Lang united with the Yu people of Nam Kam to form O Lac in 257 BC. The ancient Yu people are the ancestors of the modern Thai-speaking peoples of northern Vietnam, such as the Nung. Short hair, tattoos, and the practice of teeth blackening were all cultural aspects originating with the Yu. U Lac had a significant uniting influence, however it only lasted the one long reign of its founding monarch. In response to the first Chinese emperor Qin Shi Huang and his successors' expansion southwards, the many Yu tribes in the region united and formed a powerful kingdom of Nan Yu, which became wealthy through the exportation of ivory, pearls, and precious woods from the jungles of Vietnam. As China reunited under the Han dynasty, they began to extract tribute from Nan Yu. Eventually, this was not enough to satisfy the Han emperor. Nan Yu was invaded and incorporated into the Han Empire. Han Chinese rule was marked with failed attempts to assimilate the Viet populace into the larger homogenized Chinese culture, particularly with common women who enjoyed far greater autonomy and cultural status than their Chinese counterparts at the time. In 40 AD, two Viet daughters of a military prefect rebelled after one of their husbands was executed by the Han. The Trung sisters ambushed the small local garrison of their village and began taking other cities and towns. The Chinese did not initially take the rebellion seriously, and responded incompetently, and were defeated time and again by the sisters, who had raised an army of 80,000, including a sizable number of women, and villagers whom they had trained. The young Trung sisters, still in their 20s, established local rule, and were both crowned as queen and viceroy. Their reign would be short, as a Han veteran general with an overwhelming force was dispatched. Depending on the source, the Trung sisters were either executed, died in battle, or committed suicide to avoid capture. According to Chinese sources, their decapitated heads were sent back to the Han capital as a trophy. During the second Chinese domination of Vietnam, the rebellions would continue whenever there was internal instability in the empire. To the south, the venerable kingdom of Champa formed from an amalgamation of Sa Huyn culture and various other seafaring peoples in the region. They were greatly influenced by the Indianized Funan Empire to their south, and widely adopted Hinduism and Buddhism. In 544, after 2 centuries of failed rebellions, the Vat Suan kingdom was established by a local magistrate of non-Yu descent who granted himself the title Southern Emperor. It would take nearly another 60 years till a large enough invasion could be organized to retake Nam Viet. Over the next 300 years, there were 8 major rebellions. Eventually, the Tang dynasty granted the Vietnamese the status of an autonomous vassal, as long as they would make regular tribute payments. Shortly after the Tang collapse, the Viet were able to gain full independence from the Southern Han. Over the next 60 years, a period where 12 warlords ruled over a divided country, and 3 short-lived dynasties ensued. Despite the disunity of this period, a major Song Chinese invasion was repulsed in 981. Stability was eventually brought about by the Li dynasty, who instituted equal rule of law rather than the whims of an autocrat. The stable 216-year reign of this dynasty ended in a palace coup. The 6-year-old empress was overthrown, and her 7-year-old husband of the Tran clan was made emperor in a relatively peaceful transition. The Tran dynasty is most renowned for repulsing not 1, 2, but 3 Mongol invasions of Vietnam, most famously in 1288 when a massive Mongol fleet was utterly eviscerated. War between the Dai Viet and Champa broke out after the Viet emperor's sister was married to the Cham king, who died a year later. According to Cham tradition, she was to be cremated with him at his funeral, where she was rescued by Viet funeral guests, sparking all-out war and the Viet conquest of Champa. The occupation was short-lived, and the Tran dynasty fell into internal infighting with some of the family allying with the Cham. This began another chaotic period with multiple short-lived dynasties and a brief Chinese Ming dynasty domination of Vietnam. This period was followed by the longest-lasting Viet dynasty, the later Li, which firmly incorporated Champa as a vassal state. However, as time went on, the Champa, Ming-backed Mac in the north, Trin, and Nguyen lords all acted as independent states with their separate capitals and armies, with the Li dynasty emperor eventually only acting as a ceremonial leader. The Trin and Nguyen lords fought in several wars attempting to unite the country. Firearms were rapidly adopted by both armies during these wars, supplied by French, Dutch, and Portuguese merchants. The lavish lifestyles of the nobility and the toils of war on the majority of the population led to a mass peasant revolt led by the Tai Sun brothers, who briefly ruled the country. Through a turbulent period where another Chinese invasion was fought off seeking to reinstate the Li Emperor, the unstable rule of the Tai Sun was overthrown by the resurgent Nguyen, who consolidated the country and expanded its territory in alliance with Siam and France, who supplied them weapons, in exchange for a trade monopoly. Over time, the relationship became strained, as Vietnamese emperors sought to reduce growing French influence. After jailing Catholic missionaries entering the country illegally, French Emperor Napoleon III invaded, using this as pretext, taking land in the south and negotiating a favorable treaty. 2 decades later, the French would conquer the rest of Vietnam, and continue to take territory from the Siamese Empire. During World War II, the Empire of Japan would occupy French Indochina, ruling through a puppet emperor as the French had done. The Japanese occupation was countered by the Viet Minh, communist rebels whom were led by Ho Chi Minh. After the war, he declared independence for the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. The monarchy was disestablished, and a 7-year-long war with the French began. The Soviet Union and Communist China supported the Viet Minh, while the United Kingdom and United States supported France. After the war ended, the Geneva Accord partitioned French Indochina into Communist Democratic Republic of Vietnam, the State of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Vietnamese Catholics moved south, while Viet Minh moved north. The following year, a referendum was held, which overwhelmingly decided that the South would not be reunited with the North. Communists in the South alleged mass vote rigging and formed the Viet Cong. Backed by China, the North began aiding the Viet Cong. While fearing communist expansion throughout the region, the U.S. began aiding the South, beginning the Second Indochina War, or simply the Vietnam War. This aid was slowly increased to air support, and in 1965, 3,500 U.S. Marines were deployed. By the end of that year, more than 200,000 U.S. military personnel had been deployed to South Vietnam. The war would be a long and brutal affair. In 1970, North Vietnam invaded Cambodia in support of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. The United States and South Vietnam invaded as well in retaliation. After this escalation, anti-war sentiment began to steadily grow in the United States. By 1973, President Nixon, who was embroiled in the midst of the Watergate scandal, ceased all bombing of the North, and subsequently pulled all troops out of Vietnam. The North then began to rapidly advance towards Saigon as refugees poured south, fearing the communist regime's vengeance. In April 1975, Saigon fell, and the war was effectively over, establishing the Socialist Republic of Vietnam the following year. This has been Epimetheus, and I hope you really enjoyed that lightning-fast version of Vietnamese history. Let me know in the comments what country's history would you like to see me cover in this fashion in the future. If you're feeling generous, you can help me create more videos like this over on Patreon, starting at just $1 a month. Link in the description. I'm just one man, and it takes me many hours of researching, drawing, narrating, and editing to put together these videos. And I sincerely appreciate those of you who help me out with the expenses of this channel. And you awesome bunch that always watch to the end of the video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment.